The transport ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and Han pressed his face against the viewport. The Combat Academy hung in the blackness of space like a massive silver wheel. Lights glowed from thousands of windows. Ships moved in and out of docking bays like insects around a hive. "First time seeing it?" asked DePark, the other human cadet. She floated next to him in the zero gravity of the transport bay. Nodded. He had seen pictures, of course. Everyone on Earth knew about the Academy. It was the most famous military school in the galaxy, but pictures did not capture the real thing. The station was huge. It had to be to hold students from 47 different species. 2 years ago, we did not even know aliens existed, De said quietly. Now we are going to train with them. The transport docked with a soft thump. Gravity returned slowly as they moved through the airlock, felt his weight settle onto his feet. The air smelled strange, like metal and something sweet he could not name. Alien air, filtered for dozens of different species to breathe. The orientation hall was enormous, and stood with 300 other new cadets. Most were not humanoid. Some had 4 arms. Others had scales or fur or skin that changed colors. A few floated in tanks of liquid. Translation devices hung in the air, turning every language into sounds each species could understand. Instructor walked to the center of the hall. He was with 4 arms and gray skin that looked like rough stone. His eyes, all 4 of them, scanned the crowd. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the translation field. "Welcome to the Combat Academy. You are here because your governments believe you are the best. They are probably wrong." Some cadets shifted uncomfortably. "This academy has trained warriors for 3,000 years. Our methods are proven. Our curriculum is perfect. If you fail here, it is because you are not good enough, not because we are wrong. We are never wrong." Felt a chill run down his spine, continued. "You will learn hand-to-hand combat, weapons combat, tactics, strategy. You will learn the way every advanced species fights. You will forget whatever primitive methods you're taught you. There is one right way to fight. We will teach you that way." The first week was brutal. Woke at dawn, trained until his muscles screamed, studied alien warfare theories until his head hurt, then collapsed into bed. He barely had time to talk today except during meals. The hand-to-hand combat training was familiar, had trained in martial arts since childhood. Earth's military had taught him more before sending him to the academy. He did well in those sessions. The movements felt natural. His instructors noted his progress with approval. Then came blade combat training. Instructor stood before the class holding a training knife. It was made of some alien metal that glowed faintly blue. "The blade is the oldest weapon in the galaxy," he said. "Every species invents it, and every advanced species eventually discovers the optimal way to hold it." He demonstrated the grip. The knife pointed down, edge facing away from his body. His thumb rested along the spine of the blade. His wrist locked at an angle that looked uncomfortable too. "This is the universal grip," announced. 47 civilizations developing blade combat independently all eventually discovered this method. Mathematics proves it optimal. Biomechanics confirms it. This is how intelligent beings hold a knife. Stared at the grip. Something felt wrong, very wrong. Cadet called, "Demonstrate." Took the practice blade. It felt strange in his hand. He tried to copy his grip. The angle felt awkward. His wrist hurt. The blade seemed to be pointing in the wrong direction. "Correct," said. "Now strike the training dummy." Moved forward. His strike was slow, clumsy. The blade hit the dummy but with no power. His body did not want to move this way. "Acceptable for a first attempt," said. "You will improve." But did not improve. Not quickly anyway. Week after week he practiced the universal grip. His performance was mediocre at best. Other cadets noticed. They whispered when he walked by. The humans were supposed to be good fighters. Everyone had heard about Earth's long history of wars, but with a blade looked like a beginner. They struggled too. During meals they talked in Korean, the one language the translators sometimes struggled with. "It feels wrong," said, moving his food around his plate. "Every instinct I have fights against that grip." "Mine too," Da admitted. "But everyone uses it, every species. Maybe our instincts are just wrong. We are the members of the coalition. We have the least experience." Wanted to argue, but what could he say? Humanity had been in space for only 2 years. They had been spacefaring for 10,000 years. The Academy had trained warriors for 3,000. Who was he, a 24-year-old human, to question them? One night could not sleep. He went to the training hall during the quiet hours. A few other cadets were there, practicing alone, picked up a training blade and went to an empty corner. He tried the universal grip again. He went through the forms had taught, strike, block, thrust, retreat. Everything was technically correct. Everything felt wrong. Looked around. No one was watching. He reversed his grip. The blade now pointed forward from the bottom of his fist, edge out. The way human soldiers had held knives for thousands of years, the way that felt right. He moved through a simple drill. His body relaxed. The blade became an extension of his arm. He could strike from odd angles. He could change direction quickly. He could use his free hand to grab or block while the knife stayed ready. The stance felt alive. "What are you doing?" Spun around. De stood behind him wearing her training clothes. She must have seen him come down here. "I could not sleep," said. He quickly shifted back to the universal grip. "No, what you were doing before, that grip." De stepped closer. "Show me again." Hesitated. "It is not the academy way." "Show me anyway." Reversed his grip again. He demonstrated a few movements. De watched carefully. Her eyes widened. "That looks effective," she said slowly. "It is how humans have held knives in combat for 20,000 years, said. But the universal grip is supposed to be better, proven by mathematics and 47 civilizations." "Maybe," De said. "Or maybe those 47 civilizations all have similar body structures, and we don't." She picked up a training blade. "Teach me." They practiced together until dawn, always watching for instructors. The human grip felt natural to both of them, but academy doctrine was absolute. To question it meant failure, possibly expulsion. They agreed to keep using the universal grip in class. But alone, in secret, they would practice the human way. And wondered if 3,000 years of academy tradition might have missed something important. Something that could only be learned through blood and survival on a world where humans fought each other for before ever reaching the stars. The weeks turned into months. Performance in blade combat improved, but only slightly. He forced his body to accept the universal grip, fighting his instincts every day. In class, he looked competent but unremarkable. Other cadets who had started as beginners now moved past him. In hand-to-hand combat, though, excelled. Without weapons, he could use the techniques Earth had taught him. His instructors praised his grappling skills and his ability to fight at close range. They said humans had good instincts for unarmed combat. Too bad they struggled with blades. Heard the whispers. Some cadets thought humans were primitive, good at wrestling and punching like animals, but bad at refined weapon work. It made him angry, but what could he do? His performance with the universal grip spoke for itself. Every night, he and De met in the training hall during the quiet hours. They practiced the human grip in secret. They developed techniques that felt natural to their bodies, strike combinations that flowed smoothly, ways to use the knife while grappling, methods to switch between empty hands and blade without pause. "Why does this work so much better?" De asked one night. She had just completed a drill that would be impossible with the universal grip. Sweat dripped from her face. "Thought about it? I think it is our shoulders," he said, "and our thumbs. Humans evolved to throw spears and rocks. Our shoulders rotate in ways most aliens don't, and our thumbs oppose our fingers perfectly. We can grip things at angles they cannot." "So the universal grip is not universal at all," De said. "No, it is average, good enough for most species, but not best for any one species, not best for us." De wiped her face with a towel. "We should tell someone." "Who would listen?" asked. "We are first-year cadets from a species that joined the coalition 2 years ago. They have 3,000 years of tradition. Why would they believe us?" De had no answer. The midterm evaluations were approaching. Every cadet would be tested, first in hand-to-hand combat, then with blades, then in tactical scenarios. Cadets who performed poorly would be sent home in shame. Their governments would be embarrassed. Humanity's reputation would suffer. Knew he would do well in the hand-to-hand test, but the blade combat worried him. He was better than he had been at the start, but not good enough. Not as good as he knew he could be. 3 days before the evaluations, instructor called him aside after class. "Cadet," De said, his 4 eyes studied carefully. "You are an interesting case. Your unarmed combat skills are excellent. Some of the best in your class, but with a blade you are merely adequate." "I am working to improve," instructor said. "I know, I see your effort, but effort without results is just wasted energy," crossed 2 of his 4 arms. "I think the problem is mental. You are fighting the technique instead of accepting it. You must trust the universal grip. Stop thinking like a human, think like a warrior." Felt anger flash through him. Stop thinking like a human, he was human, that was the point. But he said, "Yes, instructor." That night could not focus during the secret training. His movements were sharp, angry. He struck the practice dummy harder than necessary. "You are upset," De observed. "Told me to stop thinking like a human," said. He struck the dummy again. As if being human is the problem. As if 20,000 years of human combat experience means nothing. "Maybe we should just accept it," De said quietly. "Use their grip, pass the evaluations. Graduate, We can go back to human methods later when we are home. Stopped, he looked at Duh. Do you really believe that? She was quiet for a long moment. Then she reversed her grip, holding the practice blade the human way. No, she said. I think they are wrong. I think the universal grip is not universal. I think we know something they do not. Then we have a choice, said. We can keep pretending, use their method, be mediocre. Let them think humans are bad with blades. He paused. Or we can show them the truth. They will not listen, Duh said. Then we make them listen. The evaluation day arrived. The entire academy gathered in the main arena. Cadets would face off against training drones and, in some cases, against instructors. Everything was recorded. Commanders from across the coalition would watch the results. This was how governments judged whether their cadets were worth the investment. Unarmed combat evaluation went perfectly. He faced 3 training drones designed to match his weight and strength. He took them all down in less than 2 minutes. The crowd murmured with appreciation. Humans might be primitive in some ways, but they could fight. Then came the blade combat evaluation. Cadets were called one by one. They faced instructor in a timed scenario. The goal was not to win, which was impossible, but to demonstrate skill, technique, and proper form. Would attack at various speeds and intensities. Cadets had to respond correctly. Watched other cadets go before him. Most did well. The universal grip had been drilled into them. They moved exactly as trained, nodded with approval after each performance. Then it was turn. He walked into the combat circle. The floor was marked with sensors that would track every movement, every angle, every strike. Perfect for analysis. Perfect for showing exactly how well a cadet understood the curriculum. Stood across from him holding a training blade. Ready, cadet. Picked up his practice blade. He held it in the universal grip. It felt wrong, as always. He could pass this evaluation. He was good enough now. He would not excel, but he would pass. He could play it safe. But playing it safe meant accepting that humans were inferior. That Earth's combat traditions meant nothing. That 20,000 years of human warfare had taught them nothing useful. No, was done pretending. Instructor said, his voice carried across the arena. The crowd grew quiet. Permission to request a demonstration. Eyes narrowed. This is your evaluation, not a demonstration time. I understand, instructor, but I wish to show an alternative technique. Human combat doctrine. If it fails, I will accept any consequences. Failure, expulsion, whatever you decide. The arena went silent. Students did not challenge instructors. They did not propose alternatives to academy doctrine. This was unheard of. Studied for a long moment. You wish to show me that 3,000 years of academy tradition is wrong, and that humanity, a species that has been in space for 2 years, knows better. Not better for everyone, instructor said. Better for humans. Our bodies are different. Our evolution is different. What works for 47 species may not work for the 48th. More silence, then made a gesture with one of his 4 hands. 1 minute. Demonstrate. If you cannot prove value in your method, you fail this evaluation entirely, and humanity's reputation suffers with you. Felt the weight of that. He represented not just himself, but all of Earth. If he was wrong, if he failed, it would hurt every human who came after him. That was in the crowd. He caught her eyes. She nodded once. Do it. Shifted his grip. The blade reversed, edge forward, extending from the bottom of his fist. The way that felt right. The way humans had held knives in trenches and alleys and battlefields for thousands of years. You are holding it wrong, said flatly. Looked up at his instructor. No, instructor, he said quietly. You are. The arena was so quiet that could hear his own heartbeat. 300 cadets stared at him. Dozens of instructors watched from the observation deck. Somewhere, cameras recorded everything. This moment would be analyzed by military commanders across the coalition. And had just told his instructor that he was wrong. 4 eyes studied with an expression that might have been curiosity or might have been anger. It was hard to tell with. That is a serious claim, cadet. You believe the Academy has taught incorrect doctrine for 3,000 years. Not incorrect for everyone, said. He kept his voice steady, respectful, but perhaps not optimal for every species. Humans have different biomechanics. Our grip works better for our body structure. 47 civilizations use the universal grip, said. All of them discovered it independently. Mathematics supports it. Physics confirms it. What makes you think humanity's way is better? 20,000 years of combat experience, replied. On Earth, we fought each other for our entire history. Different cultures, different weapons, different styles. But when it came to knife fighting at close range, we all developed similar grips. Not because of mathematics, because of survival. The methods that did not work got people killed. What remained was what worked. Was silent for a moment. Then he activated his training blade. The weapon hummed to life, glowing brighter. "Prove it. You have 1 minute. I will attack as I would in a real combat scenario. If your human grip is truly better, you will demonstrate that effectively. If not, you fail." Nodded, he adjusted his stance. The blade felt comfortable in his reversed grip, like an extension of his arm. He could feel the weight distribution. He could sense the angles of attack it allowed. "Begin," said. The instructor moved fast. His first strike came from the left, a testing blow, stepped inside it, closer than the universal grip would allow. His blade deflected its weapon while his free hand grabbed the instructor's wrist. For a brief moment, controlled both weapons. Pulled back, surprised. He attacked again, faster. Ducked under the strike and slashed upward from an angle the universal grip could not achieve. The reverse blade cut through space where its defense had been a second before. The instructor backed up, reassessing. Did not give him time. He pressed forward, keeping close. This was the key to the human grip. It worked best at grappling distance where bodies were close enough to touch. At that range, the universal grip became awkward, but the human grip thrived. Demonstrated a combination that would be impossible with the Academy's method. Strike low, transition to a high slash, use the free hand to block, then stab while rotating the body. Each movement flowed into the next. The blade stayed ready through every transition. Tried to create distance, the natural counter to close-range fighting, but stayed with him, using footwork that humans had developed over centuries. Step in, control the space, never let the opponent find their range. The instructor struck its knife hand. In the universal grip, this would force a defensive retreat, but with the human grip, simply rotated his wrist, keeping the blade threat active while moving his hand out of danger. The natural rotation of the human wrist, evolved for tool use, allowed defensive movements that other grips could not match. 30 seconds had passed. Could see instructors on the observation deck leaning forward. Cadets whispered to each other. This was not how the demonstration was supposed to go, was being pressed back, not defeated but clearly having to work harder than expected. Showed more techniques, how the human grip allowed the blade to be used while grappling, how the free hand became a weapon, striking or grabbing while the knife stayed ready, how the edge-forward position let humans cut from unexpected angles, using the full rotation of their shoulders. He demonstrated a move from human military close combat training, grabbing an opponent's weapon arm with the free hand while simultaneously stabbing with the blade. The grip made both actions possible at the same time. With the universal grip, one had to choose between controlling the opponent or attacking. Humans could do both. 45 seconds. Changed tactics. He used his forearms to create multiple threats at once, something only a few species could do, but adapted. He used his mobility, his human flexibility, to avoid what he could not block, and when he did block, the reversed grip let him redirect attacks while keeping his blade pointed at the threat. Showed a final technique, one that human soldiers had used in wars across Earth. He feinted high, drawing's block, then dropped low and swept the instructor's leg while simultaneously bringing the blade up toward the center mass. In a real fight, the opponent would have to choose, stop the takedown or stop the blade. Either choice left them vulnerable. Step back, breaking the engagement. Stop. 52 seconds had elapsed. Stopped immediately, returning to attention. His breath came hard. Sweat dripped down his back. The arena was silent. Deactivated his training blade. He looked at with all four eyes. Explain what I just witnessed. Took a breath. The human grip is not better than the universal grip in all situations, instructor. At long range, with thrusting attacks, the universal grip has advantages, but humans evolved for close combat. Our shoulders rotate in ways most species do not. Our hands can grip at angles others cannot. Our thumbs oppose our fingers with precision. He held up the training blade, showing the grip. This grip takes advantage of our biomechanics. It allows us to cut from positions that seem wrong to other species. It lets us use the knife while grappling. It makes our free hand a weapon. For human body structure, this is optimal. The universal grip, continued, is actually an average. It works acceptably for most species, but it is not truly optimal for any specific species. 47 civilizations developed it because they have similar enough body structures, but humanity's structure is different. Our evolution was different. He paused, then added, humans fought each other for 20,000 years before we reached space. Millions of battles, billions of deaths. The combat methods that did not work disappeared. What survived was what kept soldiers alive. This grip kept human soldiers alive for 200 centuries, not because it is mathematically perfect, but because it works for human bodies in real combat. It was quiet for a long time. The entire arena waited. Finally, the instructor spoke. You are saying that the Academy has taught suboptimal technique to humans? Yes, instructor. You are saying that 3,000 years of tradition missed something important. In regards to human biomechanics, yes. You are saying that I personally taught you incorrectly. Hesitated, this was dangerous ground, but he had come this far. You taught me the best technique for most species, instructor, but not the best technique for my species. That is not your fault. How could you know? Humans have been at the academy for less than a year. Turn to the observation deck. Instructors, analysis. Several instructors came down to the arena floor. They examined the sensor data from demonstration. They replayed the movements, studying the angles and forces involved. They argued among themselves in various languages, the translation field making their debate sound like chaos. One instructor, a tall being with 6 legs, spoke up. The technique is unrefined but effective. The human's advantages are real. Shoulder rotation exceeds standard humanoid parameters by 30%. Thumb opposition allows grip angles impossible for most species. Another instructor, covered in blue scales, added, the close-range focus is risky but appropriate for a species with persistence hunting evolution. They are built to chase and grapple prey. The knife grip supports that combat style. A third instructor shook her head. But it contradicts fundamental doctrine. If we allow species-specific variations, the universal grip is not universal. The entire curriculum would need revision. Raised one of his 4 hands, silencing them, he looked at. You have created a problem, cadet. The academy does not change easily. We have taught the universal grip for 3,000 years. It is proven, tested, refined. And you want us to admit it is not actually universal. I want you to admit it is not optimal for humans, said. That is all. That is not all, said. If humans need a different grip, perhaps other species do too. Perhaps the universal grip is only optimal for a certain body type. Perhaps we have been teaching incorrectly for 3. The instructor turned to face the entire arena. This is a significant moment, he announced. What happens next will be decided by the academy administration. But I will say this, Cadet has shown courage and skill. Whether he is right or wrong, he has made us question our assumptions. That alone has value. Look back at, you are dismissed, Cadet. Your evaluation is suspended pending review. Saluted and left the combat circle. As he walked toward the exit, he passed Dane the crowd. She gave him a tiny nod. Other cadets stared at him with expressions ranging from shock to respect to anger. He had challenged the academy. Now he would find out if the truth mattered more than tradition. The academy administration building was a place most cadets never entered. Sat on a bench outside the main conference room, waiting. 3 days had passed since his demonstration. 3 days of whispers, stares, and uncertainty. That had been his only real support, though a few other cadets had approached him quietly to say they respected what he had done. The conference room doors opened. An administrator, a being that looked like floating crystal, gestured to. They will see you now. Inside, a long table held 7 instructors and administrators. Sat at one end. The others were species did not recognize. They all looked serious. Recordings of his demonstration played on screens around the room, frozen at various moments of analysis. Cadet, the crystal being said, its voice chimed like bells. We have reviewed your demonstration extensively. We have analyzed your technique. We have debated its implications for 3 days. The question before us is simple. Were you right, or have you simply created an interesting but flawed variation? Stood at attention. I believe I was right, administrator, for humans at least. An instructor with dark purple skin spoke up. But that is the problem. If every species requires a different grip, we cannot teach a universal curriculum. The academy would need 47 different blade combat courses. It becomes chaos. Or it becomes honest, said. Then, realizing he might have spoken too boldly, he added, with respect. Leaned forward, explain what you mean by honest. Chose his words carefully. The academy claims to teach optimal combat techniques, but the universal grip is not truly optimal. It is average, good enough for most, perfect for none. Calling it universal is not honest, it is convenient. The crystal administrator made a sound like wind chimes. Harsh words, but perhaps accurate. Instructor, you have spent the most time analyzing this. What is your assessment? Activated a holographic display. It showed movements alongside movements from cadets using the universal grip. The human technique has measurable advantages at close range. 30% faster strike recovery, 40% more grip angles, significantly better integration with grappling techniques. The display shifted. However, at medium and long range, the universal grip maintains advantages. Better reach, better thrust mechanics, more efficient energy transfer in forward stabs. So both methods have value, the purple-skinned instructor said. Yes, agreed. But here is what concerns me most. He changed the display to show biological scans. Human shoulders, wrists, and thumbs allow movements that 70% of Academy species cannot replicate. If we teach humans the universal grip, we are making them worse fighters. We are forcing them to ignore their natural advantages. Another administrator, this one resembling a large insect, clicked its mandibles. Then we have been weakening human combatants. That is a serious failing. We have been teaching them what works for most species, said. We did not know humans were different, but now we do know. The question is, what do we do about it? The room fell silent, waited, barely breathing. Everything depended on this moment. If the Academy rejected his demonstration, humanity would be seen as arrogant, unwilling to learn. If they accepted it, everything would change. The Crystal Administrator spoke. I propose we test this more thoroughly. Cadet, you will face a series of combat scenarios against multiple opponents. Some scenarios will favor close range, others long range. You will fight using your human grip. We will compare your performance to baseline expectations for your skill level. And if I perform poorly, asked, then we conclude your technique is interesting but impractical. You fail your evaluation. Humanity learns to use the universal grip like everyone else. And if I perform well, then we conclude that the Academy has something to learn from humanity. The consequences of that are larger than you might imagine. 2 hours later stood in a full combat simulation room. Unlike the open arena, this room could create environments, obstacles, and multiple opponents. It was used for advanced tactical training, not first-year evaluations. But the administrators wanted a real test. Scenario 1, a voice announced. Urban combat close quarters, 3 opponents armed with blades, engagement range 3 meters or less. The room shifted. Walls appeared, creating a narrow alley. 3 training drones activated, each holding blades. They moved like experienced fighters, not simple targets. Held his knife in the human grip. This was his advantage zone. Close, tight, personal. The drones attacked, moved forward, not back. He used the alley walls to limit their approach angles. When the first drone struck, was already inside its reach, grappling and cutting simultaneously. The drone registered a fatal strike within 3 seconds. The second drone tried to keep distance, but in the narrow alley, distance was limited. Closed the gap, using his free hand to grab the drone's weapon arm while his blade found its target. Another fatal strike. The third drone attempted a defensive retreat, pursued, demonstrating the persistence hunting instinct humans had evolved. He did not give the drone space to reset. Strike, press, strike again. 10 seconds after the scenario began, all 3 drones were down. Scenario 2, the voice announced. Open field combat, 2 opponents armed with blades, engagement range 5 to 10 meters. The alley vanished, now stood in an open space. 2 drones circled him from medium range. This was not his advantage zone. The universal grip would be better here. But had trained in both methods now. He shifted his tactics. Instead of pressing forward immediately, he used footwork to control angles. When the drones attacked, he defended with the blade while using his mobility to avoid being flanked. He waited for one drone to overcommit, then closed the distance rapidly. Once at close range, his advantages kicked in. He took down the first drone with a combination of blade and hand strikes. The second drone maintained distance better, forcing a longer engagement, but eventually found an opening. The scenario ended with both drones down, though it took 40 seconds instead of 10. Scenario 3. Mixed environment, 4 opponents, varied weapons including blades and impact weapons, all ranges. This was the real test. Would have to adapt constantly, using his technique where it helped and compensating where it did not. The room created a complex environment with obstacles, different elevations, and varied terrain. 4 drones attacked from different directions. Used the obstacles for cover, forcing close engagements when possible and avoiding open combat when not. When he could not get close, he was more cautious, less aggressive. But whenever he achieved close range, he was devastating. The fight was brutal, took hits that would have been serious injuries in real combat, but he took down all 4 drones in 90 seconds. He ended the scenario breathing hard, his training uniform soaked with sweat. The room returned to normal, stood in the center waiting for judgment. The Crystal Administrator's voice echoed through the space. Results are conclusive. In close-range scenarios, Cadet's performance exceeded baseline expectations by 40%. In medium-range scenarios, his performance matched baseline despite using a grip not optimized for that range. In mixed scenarios, his performance exceeded baseline by 20% overall. Entered the room, he looked at for a long moment. You adapted. When your grip was not optimal, you changed tactics instead of insisting on close combat. That shows intelligence. I learned from watching Academy methods, instructor said. The universal grip taught me things about medium-range combat. I combined that knowledge with human close-range techniques. Both systems have value. Yes, said slowly. Both systems have value. That is the key insight. He turned to address the cameras recording everything. For 3,000 years, this academy has taught one method as if it were the only method. We claimed universality when we only had generality. We told 47 civilizations that they had all independently discovered the same truth, but perhaps they simply all had similar bodies. He looked back at, humanity has different bodies, different evolution, different combat history. You fought each other for 20,000 years before joining the coalition. That experience has value. Your techniques have value. We were wrong to ignore that. The other administrators entered the room. The purple-skinned instructor spoke. This creates complications. If humans need a different curriculum, other species might too. We may have been teaching suboptimal techniques to species that were too respectful to question us. Then we fix that, said firmly. The academy exists to create the best warriors possible. If we are not doing that, we are failing our purpose. Pride in our tradition means nothing if the tradition is flawed. The crystal administrator chimed softly. This decision will not be popular. Many instructors will resist, but the evidence is clear. Cadet, your demonstration has proven that the universal grip is not universal. Your technique is valid. More than valid, it is optimal for human biomechanics. Felt relief wash over him, but he remained at attention. Step closer. You challenged 3,000 years of tradition. You risked your career, your reputation, and humanity standing in the coalition. Why? Met his instructor's four-eyed gaze. Because the truth matters more than tradition, and because human soldiers deserve to be taught techniques that work for human bodies. We did not survive 20,000 years of warfare by ignoring what worked. Was quiet for a moment. Then he did something I'd never seen, the bowed slightly, a gesture of respect. You have taught the teachers. That is a rare achievement. The academy will change because of you. As left the building, he saw De waiting outside. She looked at him with a question in her eyes. We won, said simply. De smiled, then she asked, what happens now? Now, said, the real work begins. The academy council chamber was full. Every instructor and senior administrator had gathered. The debate had been going on for 2 hours. Voices were raised. Arguments flew back and forth. Some instructors insisted that demonstration changed nothing. Others demanded immediate curriculum reform. The room was split nearly in half. And they sat in a side gallery, watching. They were not allowed to speak, but they had been required to attend. Whatever decision came from this meeting would shape not just their education, but the future of human combat training in the coalition. An elderly instructor from the species stood up. Her skin was translucent, showing veins of light beneath. We are being asked to abandon 3,000 years of proven doctrine because one cadet performed well in controlled tests. This is madness. Tradition exists for a reason. Another instructor, the purple-skinned one named, countered. Tradition is not the same as truth. The cadet did not just perform well. He demonstrated that our so-called universal technique is not universal at all. How many other species have we been teaching incorrectly? You cannot know that, the instructor said. His species is new. Perhaps they are simply an outlier. Or perhaps, said, standing to address the chamber, we never questioned our assumptions because no one dared to challenge us. The humans dared, and they were right. The chamber grew quiet, commanded respect. When he spoke, people listened. I have taught blade combat at this academy for 90 years, continued. I believe the universal grip was perfect. Mathematics supported it. Biomechanics confirmed it. 47 civilizations used it, but I was wrong. Not completely wrong, but wrong enough. He activated a holographic display showing comparative anatomy. Look at human shoulders. Look at their wrist rotation. Look at their thumb opposition. These are not minor differences. They are fundamental. Teaching humans the universal grip is like teaching a bird to swim. They can do it, but they will never excel, because we are forcing them to ignore their natural advantages. A beetle-like instructor clicked his mandibles. So what do you propose? That we create 47 different curricula, 48 now? We do not have the resources. No, said. I propose we teach principles, not doctrine. We teach students why the universal grip works for most species. We teach them the biomechanics behind it. And then we teach them to analyze their own bodies and develop techniques that optimize their natural advantages. The instructor shook her head. That will create chaos. Students need structure, not experimentation. Students need to survive combat, said sharply. Would you rather they follow doctrine perfectly and die, or adapt to their strengths in life. The debate continued, but could see the momentum shifting. More instructors were nodding along with arguments. The evidence was too strong to ignore. The human technique was not just different, it was measurably better for human physiology. Finally, the crystal administrator who led the council called for silence. We will vote, but first, I want instructor to explain exactly what changes he proposes. Return to the center. First, we create a new module in the Blade combat curriculum, species-specific optimization. All students will learn the universal grip as a foundation, but then they will study their own biomechanics and explore variations that work for their body structure. He changed the display to show a proposed curriculum. Second, we invite Cadet to serve as an assistant instructor for human combat techniques. He will teach other humans, and he will help us understand what makes human physiology unique. Third, we reach out to all member species and ask, have we been teaching you optimally, or have you been too polite to tell us we were wrong? The last point caused a stir. The idea that dozens of species might have been quietly accepting suboptimal training was embarrassing, but also possible. This is not about abandoning tradition, concluded. This is about fulfilling our mission. We exist to create the best warriors possible. If we are not doing that because of pride or stubbornness, then we have failed. The humans have shown us that we can do better. We should thank them, not resist them. The crystal administrator's voice rang through the chamber. We will vote, all in favor of implementing instructors' proposed changes. Lights appeared above each instructor's seat indicating their vote. Green for yes, red for no. Held his breath. The count appeared on the main display. 22 green, 15 red. The changes would be implemented. The chamber erupted in mixed reactions. Some instructors celebrated, others stormed out angrily, but the decision was made. The academy would change. The grab Sarm, you did it, you actually changed the academy. We did it, corrected, and did most of it. He had the courage to admit he was wrong. In the weeks that followed, the changes began. Found himself teaching human knife combat to a class of mixed species. Most were just curious, wanting to see what the controversy was about, but a few seemed genuinely interested in understanding different approaches. They joined him as a co-instructor. Together, they broke down why the human grip worked for human bodies. They explained the evolution behind it, the biomechanics that made it effective. They emphasized that it was not better than the universal grip in absolute terms, just better for humans in specific situations. Other species began exploring their own variations. A six-limbed species discovered they could use multiple grips simultaneously, creating defensive and offensive capabilities the universal grip never allowed. A species with flexible tentacles found they could wrap their weapons in ways rigid-handed species could not imagine. The Academy was not abandoning the universal grip, but they were finally admitting it was a starting point, not an ending point, a useful foundation, not an absolute truth. One evening was approached by an older human, a colonel visiting from Earth's military command. The colonel introduced himself as Min, a special forces instructor. I watched recordings of your demonstration, Colonel said. Command is impressed. We are sending more instructors to the academy. Human combat doctrine will be integrated into coalition training. You opened that door. I just showed them what we already knew, said. Earth's military has used these techniques for centuries. Yes, but they did not know, and they needed to know, Colonel smiled. You understand what this means. Human soldiers will now be trained in techniques optimized for human bodies. Our troops will be more effective. That is a significant contribution to coalition defense. Had not thought about it in those terms. He had just wanted to be taught correctly, but the colonel was right. Better training meant soldiers who survived combat. It meant lives saved. There is more, the colonel continued. Other species are analyzing their traditional combat methods. Despite their instructors' objections, have rediscovered ancient blade techniques their ancestors used before joining the academy. Techniques that work better for their translucent, flexible bodies. The academy had trained them to ignore their own history. So we helped them too, Da said. She had joined them. You started a revolution, Colonel said. A quiet one, but a revolution nonetheless. The academy is remembering that it serves the students, not the other way around. Months later, stood before a graduating class. He was still a cadet himself, but his role as an instructor for human combat techniques had become official. He watched as cadets from a dozen species demonstrated their blade work. Each used techniques adapted to their bodies. Some used the universal grip. Others used variations. A few used completely different approaches. Stood beside him, the instructor had become something like a mentor too. What you started has spread beyond just blade combat, said. Other departments are questioning their assumptions, asking if their universal techniques are truly optimal for all species. Is that good or bad? Asked. It is honest, replied, and honesty is always good even when it is uncomfortable. Thought about how far things had come. 6 months ago, he had been a struggling student, forced to use a grip that felt wrong. Now he was teaching others, and the academy itself had changed its doctrine, not because anyone wanted to create conflict, but because the truth mattered more than pride. I learned something from you, said. Something beyond combat techniques. I learned that being wrong is not shameful. Staying wrong when you know better, that is shameful. You showed me that 3,000 years of tradition is worthless if it is 3,000 years of being slightly incorrect. You listened, said, most would not have. True, but you gave me evidence I could not ignore. That is the key. You did not just complain, you demonstrated. You proved your point beyond doubt. He approached with news. Earth is sending 20 more military instructors to the academy. They will teach human combat doctrine across all weapon systems, not just blades. The coalition wants to learn everything humanity knows about close-quarters combat. Felt a mixture of pride and responsibility. Humanity had been fighting for its entire existence. That brutal history had taught them things other species never needed to learn. Now those lessons could help everyone. Do you think the academy will ever go back to the old ways? De asked. He shook his head. No, once you see the truth you cannot unsee it. The academy claimed to teach optimal combat. Now we actually do, or at least we try. Different species, different bodies, different optimizations. That is the real universal principle. There is no one-size-fits-all perfection. Watch the cadets continue their training. Human, alien, and everything in between. All learning from each other now. All becoming better warriors because they were allowed to be themselves instead of forced into a universal mold. What will you do after graduation? Asked. Return to Earth's military, said. Train more soldiers. Make sure every human who serves knows techniques optimized for human bodies. And you looked at Duh. The same, she said, but I also want to study other species' combat methods, learn from them the way they learned from us. There is so much knowledge in the coalition, we should not waste it. Made a gesture with his 4 arms that had learned men approval. That is wisdom. You have taught us. Now let us teach you. That is how real progress happens. As the training session ended, reflected on what had happened. He had come to the academy expecting to learn. He had learned, but not what he expected. He had learned that questioning authority was not disrespectful if done with evidence and respect. He had learned that tradition was valuable but not sacred. He had learned that the voice in a room sometimes saw what everyone else missed. Most importantly, he had learned that humanity's value to the coalition was not just their technology or resources. It was their perspective, their history, their hard-won knowledge from 20,000 years of warfare. Earth had been isolated for its entire history, fighting itself because it knew no aliens existed. That isolation had been tragic, but it had also forged humanity into survivors, and survivors had lessons to teach. As left the training hall, he passed a wall where the academy displayed its motto in dozens of languages. The translation field rendered it into Korean for him. Perfect the art of combat through timeless wisdom. Someone had added a new line beneath it, in fresh lettering. But remember that wisdom must evolve, or it becomes dogma. Smiled, the academy was learning, slowly, painfully, but learning. And that was the most human thing he could have taught them, that being wrong was acceptable, but refusing to adapt was not. In the end, it was not about knife grips at all. It was about being willing to change when change was needed, about valuing truth over comfort, about remembering that 50 species working together meant 50 different perspectives, and all of them had value. The humans had not come to the stars to teach the galaxy how to fight, but they had brought lessons forged in blood and survival, and the galaxy, to its credit, had finally listened. That was enough.